When we talk about innovation, a connection to research is produced rather quickly. When we look at the report that was drawn up by the Scientific Advisory Council on Global Change, it is apparent from that which we just heard in the discussion, including the introductory remarks of the organisers, the Chancellor, and also in the panel discussion, there is a broad consensus about the objectives needed to be achieved. The devil is in the details as always. This is the task that we have begun to discuss here. How can we accomplish implementation steps? And when we talk about implementation, we are talking about trade-offs. The trade-offs are what I believe we partly need to work out today. That means when we talk about implementation, we're talking about the individual steps of implementing. Just to mention a few, when we talk about sustainable prosperity, as it is called in this session, or in other words, sustainable development of prosperity, then we have conflicts between individual autonomous action and that which we all consider to be normatively essential. We have conflicts between the actions of individual economic key players and that which we consider necessary. A small example, as Lena Srivastava just said, we should oblige all car manufacturers to first produce a small car with climate-neutral consumption. At first, that is a good thought. In Germany, there are examples prevalent in the discussion about electric vehicles. In some cases, it is actually the manufacturers presently selling in higher price segments that are in turn the drivers of innovation. Whilst they have sufficient purchasing power to buy into the initially expensive technologies, such circumstances will delay mass market penetration in the mass market for small cars. This means, therewith bringing me to the role of science, that conventional wisdom is in some cases to be undermined and scrutinized. This is also the task of science. Thus, the next conflict is the question, which preconditions do we make for science, and where is science controlled automatically? This is just a small introduction to the trade-offs that we then have. What does the expert opinion say about transformation research? They must be inclusive, very clear, thematically all-encompassing, integrate new materials, as also involve new participants. We have just heard this on the panel. When we talk about innovation, not only about technological innovations, and that was your point, Ms. Srivastava, we also have to involve the political sciences, for example. Transparency is one issue. We have also heard this from Lord Stern. Market failure. If scientific results are not publicly available, then we have a problem. Participation. In other words, involving new groups in the scientific process. Trans and interdisciplinary. Trendy words that we all know, but the institutional, structural and thematical implementation is a great challenge. Focus on sustainability as a cross-sectional perspective and well-financed. Herr Messner said in his opening remarks, we know how much money we need. I would say from the perspective of a Ministry of Research, we are always told, it's never enough. So how much do we need? How much do we have? And how can we properly utilize the available resources? These are the challenges. Second point, science and research as drivers for innovation. Taking the first point, an inclusive science, we are trying to work on involving new participants in the scientific process. We, that means the Federal Ministry for Education and Research, we are not only a policy designing ministry, but also a ministry that finances research. That means, in addition to the research funding agencies in Germany and the research funding bodies that organize themselves out of the scientific circles, we provide additional money for research and development. We do this to tap additional innovation potentials and remove structural deficits. What are we doing to meet the demands of inclusiveness? We have all our support programs for so-called upstream agenda purposes. That means we get into discussions with the so-called stakeholders, such as in energy research, climate research and sustainability research, and inquire into science and into the economy. What are the research needs that we face? In addition, and this is new and we are working to find the appropriate form, comes the civil dialogue. We have launched a civil dialogue in the past year on energy technologies and have asked for the decision on energy transition. What are the demands that citizens make towards high technology development in the energy sector? And third, we have convened with a strategic advisory board where politics, science and economy will sit together to discuss future challenges in the areas of climate and energy, health and nutrition, mobility, communication and civil security. I mention these 5 areas because the issue of sustainability, which stands at the forefront here, is relevant in all areas. However, it is not surprising that in some cases you also run here into some trade-offs and distribution of resources conflicts. How much money do we spend on health research? How much money do we spend on energy research? These are political decisions that we need to make and also must negotiate in such committees. Second example, we have declared a year of science for sustainability this year. We've had a variety of events with numerous participants throughout the country to create public awareness of the issues and the research challenges that we face in order to address the issue of sustainability. Another aspect, the obligations of science and research that I have just mentioned, included transparency and accountability. Here are some examples. Science can give no unambiguous answers. Mr. Mario Molina has just said, science says what could happen. This means, among others, we expect alternatives and scenarios from science. The German National Academy of Sciences, together with the National Academy of Engineering Sciences, does so in the field of energy research. The first expert opinion on alternatives for energy research was in 2009. In 2011, from these options that had been presented at the time, the renewable energy option was further elaborated, and the option nuclear energy amongst these decisions was dismissed. Now it's time to present the next alternative within this option.
Beschlüssen vom Tisch. Und jetzt heißt es, innerhalb dieser Option die nächsten Alternativen aufzuzeigen. Was machen wir als Forschungsministerium?
What do we do as a Ministry of Research? We are in discussion with academies to make this process long-term, because we cannot fully predict a process such as the energy turnaround. Until 2050, this is a complex decision-making situation. That means we must engage in a learning process together, where we are constantly developing new alternatives, presenting scenarios, to make decisions on this basis that also will be readjusted after some time. However, this means that science must take the responsibility to give guidance. Without such guidance, we cannot create policies. An expert opinion, such as the one on global transformation, is one element in this discussion of conflict. At the same time, science can be an early warning system. Where do ideas fail? What doesn't work? My third point, some examples from the field of research for sustainability. When we talk about implementation and added value potential of research, we have the 5 major challenges, which I just mentioned, for this high-tech strategy. These challenges are so great and abstract that we have to break them down. In the area of climate and energy, for example, we have developed a so-called future project for the city of the future with the requirements CO2 neutral and environmentally efficient. And we have now entered into a dialogue on implementation where researchers and where companies consider together which technologies we can develop and until when, and what models, also new business models, do we need in order to bring such technologies to the market. Furthermore, what societal inclinations are there that help accept such technologies, or can they even be driven from society? We've heard from India that new models are necessary for urban development. We are testing this in the future project, City of the Future. Namely, we have launched a competition in 30 cities in Germany for a dialogue between municipalities and the political leadership of a city with its citizens to develop urban sustainability concepts within the time frame of 1 year. With the aid of these sustainability concepts, we want to conduct a research agenda in a second step. Second example of sustainability research, research for energy turnaround. What do? We create a map for energy research in Germany. We work together with national academies, like I've already said. We are establishing a research platform, Energy Turnaround, with scientific organizations. We want to enter into a regular dialogue with science, which organizes autonomously so that we can constantly realign what needs to be done in the tension between the self-controlled science and the social challenges of the energy transition, short, medium and long term. Next example, we want to involve the system perspective in this process. That is, not to work just technology-oriented, but also with economists, social scientists, and demographic researchers, just to mention a completely different department, so that we can, in fact, advance such an issue in a cross-disciplinary fashion, to establish a dialogue ranging from the technology sciences to the so-called human sciences. International dimension as a last catchphrase. We first need international cooperation because some technologies cannot be paid for nor developed alone. It is now about the division of labor in Europe and beyond. If we, just to name a major technology project that is also not uncontroversial, think about fusion research as an element of future energy supply after 2050, this is a technology, a research that we alone in Germany cannot finance. The short and long-term challenges of the energy turnaround make it necessary for us to prioritize research resources in other areas. At the same time, this also means that we must keep our options open for the long term. This is only possible through international sharing of responsibility. Secondly, the conditions themselves show that even research on climate change and energy cannot just be oriented nationally because the challenges are global. We heard the key word, geoengineering, from Herr Messner's opening statement, a controversial line of research. In Germany, we have asked, how can we deal with it? Our first answer is, in direct support, we will not promote geoengineering technologies, but we need to know what is happening. Because if these technologies are used in other countries, this may also impact the climate or weather phenomena in Germany or other parts of Europe. So we really need to know what happens. Third catchphrase for international cooperation, responsibility and the assumption of responsibility. A concrete example here. We, as a Ministry for Research, have entered into a research alliance with 2 regions in Africa, namely in Western and Southern Africa, where we are setting up research centers for sustainable land development. That is, we are exploring together with our partners in African countries the impact of climate change phenomena on local land use. We do this by first making research equipment available and secondly by building local universities and graduate schools, thereby conducting capacity development and capacity building. And thirdly, we do that by creating very practical recommendations of action for governments or even regional administrations through this research.
Sehr praktische Handlungsempfehlungen für Regierungen oder gar regionale Administrationen erzeugen.
This is the broad range of international collaborations. I'm keen to see how we could discuss this even further. Thank you very much.